right, I think we are ready to go here. All right, so you guys can hear me, you can see my screen. All right, so today we are going to talk about the qualified overtime reporting for 2026 through 2028. For calendar year 25, you know that you're having to run the reports, do your own calculations, and do the adjustments. For the next 3 years, SSDT worked really hard to create some different fields that will allow the system to do the calculations for you so that you do not have to, and it will automatically show up on the W-2. So they've created 2 new fields. We're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about all the different variances. So, and I did send out, let's see, let me pull it over here. I sent out this document, which hopefully you guys can see. Tell me if you can see my Word document.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I sent this out back at sometime in December. Just trying to get you guys the information as soon as possible so you can start processing your January payrolls. I'm going to kind of skip first and second page because the first page is just information from the IRS and who qualifies for this and why they're doing it and all of that. And then page 2 is about reporting for 2025. But I want to focus today on 2026 through 28. So these are the items we're going to go over. Hang on. Okay. So like I said, there are 2 new fields. There is one on the position screen, and there is one on current/future pay. So under the position screen, so we're just going to click on my person here. So under the position screen, you now have this overtime classification. You have 2 options. You have exempt and non-exempt. Exempt means they don't get overtime. None of their overtime should be reported as qualified overtime. So none of that. They either don't get it, or if they do get paid anything that's overtime, it's not going to be reported as qualified overtime. Non-exempt means, yes, they could potentially have overtime that falls under the qualified overtime for IRS reporting. That is all according to the Fair Labor Standards. So you could do some Google on that. This field, so if I click edit, these are your 2 options. If you select exempt, never going to have overtime reported on the W-2. Non-exempt, they could potentially have it with some other factors. This can be mass changed. You could also mass load it if you would rather do that. But we'll talk about what happens if you don't. If you're like, well, what if I don't do anything in that field? We'll talk about that. So that's the first new field. The second new field is when you are in either current or future pay. I'm going to use future because I think that's what most people use. If you create a new entry, I'm going to pick on him here. When you select the, you see here, the field right here, it is grayed out until you select either the overtime or the blended overtime pay type. So if I choose overtime, I can now, it automatically defaults dependent upon what you have set up over here. So this is a different person. Let me go back to hers. So if you have on the position screen, if you said the employee, if this is either non-exempt or blank, when you enter an overtime pay type and future pay, it will default to be included, meaning, yes, include this overtime amount in the qualified overtime. So it'll automatically pull that up. Now, if this is Brett here, my Bugs Bunny here. Bugs is exempt. So meaning no overtime. So if I come in here to create an overtime for Bugs Bunny, it automatically defaults this to say excluded, meaning it will not be included in the W-2. So if this is blank or non-exempt, this defaults to say included. If this says exempt, this defaults to be excluded. You can change it. So if I am doing this, so Brett is my non-exempt person. So if I'm going to pay him overtime, but for whatever reason, this overtime should not be included in his qualified overtime for his W-2, I can change this to say excluded, and then it will not be included in the calculation. Does that so far make sense? Okay. So, sorry, I needed to mute somebody. So one of the things, so what got me thinking was, well, what happens, because I was concerned that people wouldn't have a chance to update all of these fields prior to running their first payroll. And so I asked some questions. So I want to show you where this is. I sent this link. I'm going to go to the documentation. I sent the link in that email where this document was. But I'll show you how to get to it from USPS. So if you click on help and go to documentation and click on this user guide, 400 steps to get here, but we'll get there. If you scroll down under appendix, if I click on this little arrow and then click on useful procedures, SSDT has a lot of information. It's under reporting overtime under the One Big Beautiful Bill Act.
Hey, Tanya, can you share your screen? Sorry, we're still seeing USPS.
Well, is it just delayed by chance or no?
Maybe.
So you don't see this reporting overtime under One Big Beautiful Bill?
No, I see Brent Hurst. I see a laundry list of employees under demo schools.
Somebody said they see the correct screen.
Okay, well, go ahead. I'll figure it out.
I'm sorry.
I'm
That's
seeing
okay.
the correct screen as well. Yeah.
Yes, I'm
Okay, so
seeing
maybe there's a delay.
Okay, sorry about that. Go ahead.
No, you're okay. Monya, call me later and I can show you how to get there.
Thanks.
Okay, so of course this chart would be really nice for you to see. So there's a chart on here that I found. So first of all, there's a lot of information. So if you're like, I have lots of questions, come in here and see if, because they have frequently asked questions. So this might answer some of your questions, but I love this little chart because that's a big question. So if on the position screen, if that overtime classification, what happens if I leave it blank? Well, if I leave it blank, and then under payroll payments, so if I leave that FLSA value, if I also leave that blank, which it automatically defaults, so it's not blank anymore, will it be included on their W-2? Yes, it will. If the position overtime classification is blank, and I say on the future pay item to exclude that overtime payment, will it be reported? No, it won't. So I bring all, and then if it's blank and I say it's included on the future pay, then yes, it gets included. So I bring all this up to say, if you're processing overtime, and so let's say you don't update the position screen, and every person that you would pay overtime qualifies for overtime and you would report it on their W-2 as qualified overtime. You kind of don't really have to do anything, if that makes sense. Like, you don't really have to update the position screen, because by it being blank, it's automatically going to be included. So take that for what you will. There's absolutely no harm if you've already updated it and you want to update it. By all means, update it. I just found it interesting that basically by doing nothing, it gets reported. So use this, because I do think this is super helpful. If you list the employee as exempt, so their position is exempt, never, no matter what you do, will it be included in their W-2. So hopefully that helps clear up a little bit of the questions. So I want to focus on something else. So does anybody have any questions about the different fields and how they're functioning? All right, I'll take your silence as you got it. Okay. So I do want to go back to, that's not where I wanted to go. I want to talk about, so they also, something that they created was a new pay type. And this pay type is called blended overtime. This is, and there's a, on the Word document that I sent out, I did give an explanation and an example of how this works, because it's kind of unique. So the way that this is intended to work is if I have an employee, well, let's go over the example because I think that's probably easiest. So this employee has, 30 hours on job 1, 15 hours on job 2, different rates of pay. So we come up with the blended overtime rate, and I'm sure everybody's got some sort of spreadsheet that they're using to come up with that. What you would do, so that means that he has, this employee has 5 hours of overtime, right, at a blended rate. So you would enter in future pay a pay type of miscellaneous and pay him the 5 units at the blended rate, not the blended overtime rate, just the blended rate. Then you would create another entry using the blended overtime rate, 5 units, and do that halftime amount. So whatever the difference between the overtime is and the blended rate. The reason for that is so that when the system needs to do the calculation, because qualified overtime for IRS is only the halftime portion. It's not all overtime, it's only the halftime. So this way, when you use blended overtime, it's going to use this rate right here. It's not going to use this 21. It'll be the correct rate. If you were to just use the overtime pay type and change that rate, what the system does is when you use the overtime pay type, it goes out and looks at the compensation screen that it's attached to find the rate, and then it'll find the halftime amount. So if you're just overriding that overtime with the blended rate, it's actually going to end up reporting a slightly higher overtime rate, because it's using what is probably a lesser compensation rate. God, I hope that makes sense. It's very confusing. Please tell me if I need to restate that in another way.
So the blended overtime is just the halftime.
If you have a blended overtime rate and you're going to use the blended overtime pay type, yes, you're going to use just the halftime amount. So 5 units at the halftime amount, and then 5 units at their blended rate using miscellaneous.
Okay.
I think that's one of those things where probably until you're getting ready to actually do that, you may not really realize that you have questions. So if the first time you go to do a blended rate, if you're like, wait a minute, what am I doing here? By all means, let us know. We can go over it again. That's why I put this example out here, because I just couldn't quite wrap my head around it either. And then I was like, what? I don't know. I really had to think about what the purpose there was, but the way that the system is going to do the overtime calculation, this is what you have to do in order for that calculation to be correct. I was just reading over here to see if we need, I think that's kind of everything. This was short and sweet, but I just wanted to, it was kind of confusing and a lot. And like I said, I learned a lot as far as how, what happens if you don't update this field. Another question that came up yesterday, and I don't have an answer on it yet, and neither does SSDT, but the question was, they work on a holiday on a Sunday or whatever, and they actually get double time, not time and a half. How does that work? We don't know yet. I'm hoping to have an answer. This person is going to be my guinea pig and run their payroll, and we're going to look and see what the W-2 looks like after the payroll is processed. But I feel like if you use the overtime pay type and change the rate from time and a half to be double time, if it's going out to look at the compensation, it should just figure out the difference, in my opinion, but I don't know that. So I don't know how common that is, but once I have more information, I can let everybody know. I don't know at this point in time. So
Tanya,
yes.
can you go over how you went to the help
Yes.
button and then just over that again?
So in USPS, there's this help and there's a drop down, and you just click on documentation. And then you've got the user guide. And honestly, this page right here that you land on, if you don't have this bookmarked as a favorite, you should. I'm on here 700 times a day. So once you're here for this particular document, it's going to be under appendix. And then once you click on appendix, you want useful procedures. And then it's clear down here, reporting overtime under the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. And that's what I have there. Also, if you can find the
Thank
email I
you.
sent back in December, there's a direct link to this. And they are continuing to update this. Like it just got updated yesterday, actually. Anything else?
To clarify, Tanya, for calendar year 2025 W-2s, we don't have to do anything as far as a reporting standpoint on the W-2 itself.
The IRS has given penalty relief if you do not report it. You can report it by running the overtime report that we've created, figuring out the amount, using adjustments to post it. And it reports for this year, it reports in box 14 with a code of QOT.
Okay.
Years moving forward, I believe it's going to be in box 12 with the code of TT. So the IRS says, no, you don't have to report it this year, but you do have the option to report it. I think most districts have opted to go ahead and report it on the W-2 based on questions that I've gotten, I think. So, but it's up to you. There is a
Okay.
relief for this year.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Anything else? Okay, well, if there's no other questions, I'm going to give you all back the rest of the day. If you have questions, put in a ticket, call us, email us, whatever, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. All right. Have a good one, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome.